Hello everyone, welcome back to season 2 of On the Beaten Track. I'm your host Rehana. Thank you so much for everybody who stuck all the way through season 1. It's really been a journey for me and a help for you, and a journey of learning and understanding and unpacking all of these events and people, and from the beginning how we got to where we are. On the 3rd of July, I celebrated here on the channel. It's been amazing learning in more ways than one. Learning as I'm doing the research and doing some of the deep dives, and then learning how to do all of this. It's not really like my bag, right? So recording and editing might take me longer than anybody else. But, we learn and we grow and we move. Before we go on to what season 2 is going to hold, it just started. But we in our greatest rivalry era for the next couple of weeks. I will be in every Springbok top I own for these recordings. It's also my 47th birthday coming up, and we will be going to the game on the 28th. I had the joy of going to the Stormers game this Friday. It really was uniquely amazing. The crowd was electric. The light show, unexpected, was good. The next day was spent like I was watching Chasing the Sun again, right? It's just like tears from all these boys that were in the lineup against some of these people that were their heroes or are their heroes. It was really an awesome night. Shout out to the Weinberg boys. It took us a while to know which school it was, but they just brought the vibe. They were doing the chants. They were doing the Norwegian row from the World Cup. I'll put some of that in here if I can. It was super fun. It really was. And I think one of the guys that I follow, Mitch, was saying really should have a schoolboy like chance at all of these games. And listen, I grew up watching cricket at St. George's with the band. So bringing a vibe is really no problems here. So the next day, like I said, seeing the sun moments, just crying about Yakin and Imad and the guy who was actually crying, who was sick before the game. You guys had me all up in my rugby feels on Saturday after the game. And that's before we watched the Springboks. So, been missing rugby, been missing so much sports. After the World Cup, there was just the slump. So, but I'm so happy that rugby's back and that it's the series. It's going to be good. What does season 2 hold for us? It's more the same vibe. We trudged through all our history and we got to this pivotal moment. And there really are so many pivotal moments before that made this construction of apartheid and institutionalization of apartheid possible, and where they were able to wage psychological warfare on the masses and make them believe that what they were getting was what they deserved and what was best for them. Yeah, we've trudged our way all through that. We've spoken a lot about resistance, and I think that's been a lot of the theme for the tail end of the season, talking about those individuals that stood up and who got us, listen, not always successful, but how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time type of thing. Each resistance or each activist movement then informed the next and informed the next. And as people grew and saw what was happening around them in Mozambique, etc., that then informed how they would then mobilize themselves. We continue in that vein. I'm still looking at all these amazing heroes. I am doing 2 deep dives on 2 ladies, reading their books, which does mean that takes a bit longer for me to get through. But I thought it was really important to not skim over those two individuals. Hopefully, I will be getting those out sooner rather than later. We're going to take ourselves, like I said, with all these heroes, we move the 80s. We're moving ourselves into our first democratic elections. So between the period where we are now until this actually happens, we're going to be exploring the people, the events, the things that were happening in the country, things that were happening in the world to support the people that were fighting. There is still a lot to get through, but up front, we're still busy with the SASO trial and those individuals, and then we'll be moving into more of the BCM or BCP members and those who worked very closely with Steve Biko. So we're still in our Steve Biko era and just like highlighting those individuals that were along for the ride with him or offshoots of what he was trying to achieve. So yeah, I'm very excited and hope you're excited to continue this journey with me. We've spent several episodes in this series telling the story of Black consciousness. Every time I've unpacked someone or I've spoken about how they got there, we're really looking at that movement through the lives of individuals. Then in our most recent episodes, we told the story of the SASO Nine or the BPC trial, the state versus Cooper and 8 others through the life of Seth Cooper, Srini Mudli, and Patrick Terralakota. But the trial had 9 accused. That leaves 6 other names who appear in every account of this trial, who sat through those 17 months. So just remember, this trial was like going for ages in that Pretoria Supreme Court. Those individuals were convicted along with the people I spoke about now, and they were sent to Robben Island. And I feel like their stories have not been told in the same depth. I really wanted to change that today. They came from different parts of South Africa, from different universities and different backgrounds. Some have public records stretching decades after the trial. One died before liberation came. One died in the very year South Africa became a democracy. One became a globally recognized figure in scouting and advertising. One served in the post-apartheid parliament, and one has left so little documented trace after his release that reconstructing his life beyond the trial is genuinely difficult, which in itself is kind of a story. All 6 were arrested in September and October 1974, charged with treason under the Terrorism Act for helping to organize rallies at Curry's Fountain Stadium in Durban and at Turfloop, celebrating the FRELIMO victory and Mozambique's impending independence. The police had banned the rallies, I think like the day before they had organized them. They were going to go ahead because it was just the next day. Steve Biko had counseled caution, warning that rallies would provoke repression. He was right, but as one of the accused later put it, they believe the trajectory of the struggle should not be dictated by the repressive regime's response. The trial ran from January 1975 to December 1976. It became the longest political trial in South Africa up to that point because, you have to outdo yourself always. Steve Biko appeared as a defense witness for 5 days in May 1976. He, in that moment, turned the witness stand into what was described as a seminar for Black consciousness, an official recording of what Black consciousness was, because at that stage he was banned. His testimony likely prevented harsher sentences. To think that there was some level of empathy and understanding from these people, I know it's hard, but even they could be persuaded by intellect, if there's any other way I can put that. So all 9 were convicted. Their sentences range from 5 to 6 years and all served on Robben Island. So let's start with somebody we've spoken about before, which is Aubrey Mokoape. He had an extraordinary pre-trial histories of anyone on the dock and basically anybody that was starting or igniting the movement at that stage. He was, by some accounts, the youngest political prisoner in South African history, arrested at 16 years old in 1960 for his involvement in the anti-past campaign of the 21st of March, led by Robert Sobukwe of the Pan-Africanist Congress. He served 3 years at the Old Forts Number 4 prison complex in Johannesburg, beginning his political imprisonment before most of the future SASO comrades had even started high school. After his release from Number 4, he enrolled at the University of Natal Medical School in the Black section at Wentworth in Durban, the same campus where Steve Biko was studying. This was not a coincidence in any meaningful sense. It was the consequence of the apartheid's forced concentration of Black medical students into a single institution. What did they think was gonna happen? All those intellectuals? Maybe they just thought they were gonna stay intellectual to not get their hands dirty. But they didn't account for, in this particular place, in this particular moment, the combination of people would be combustible. Mokoape was there alongside Biko in the founding cohort of what would become the Black consciousness movement. After his conviction in the SASO trial, he served his sentence on Robben Island. He was released in December 1982. The apartheid state had a particular cruelty in store for him. The South African Medical and Dental Council struck him off the medical practitioner's role for having served a criminal sentence. He had qualified as a doctor, gone to prison for his political beliefs, and came out to find he was no longer permitted to practice medicine. He fought back. He won a landmark legal case in 1983 that restored his medical license. The decision mattered as a precedent, establishing that political conviction should not automatically disqualify a person from professional practice. He then spent years as a doctor and activist, working on behalf of the communities the BCM had always sought to serve. How amazing. He maintained his connection to the BCM-aligned politics and the Pan-Africanist tradition, the tradition he had first embraced as a teenager inspired by Sobukwe. He married Phumla Gwen Mokoape, a fellow revolutionary, and they were together for 50 years. They had 6 children. That's madness. Jealous Mao. Aubrey Mokoape died in December 2020 in a hospital in Durban from complications of COVID-19. He was 76. Now, the smiley-faced individual who fought with all his heart left this legacy behind of community service, of fighting for what you believe in. The EFF paid tribute to him. The BCM community mourned a man who had been a political prisoner before the movement he later helped found even existed. A man whose life spanned from the anti-past campaigns of 1960 to the pandemic year of 2020. What a life. Muntu, the name means person in Zulu and Xhosa. It is a name that carries, in the philosophy of Ubuntu, the full weight of what it means to be human. And the people who knew Muntu Myeza have spent more than 3 decades insisting that the name was right, that he embodied something about full humanness that was difficult to define, but unmistakable to encounter. Muntu Myeza was born in Natal on the 3rd of December 1950. He attended high school at Orlando West in Soweto before returning to Natal to complete his matric at Olange High School in Inanda, the school founded by John Dube, one of the founders of the ANC. He was, by the time he reached university, also the amateur heavyweight boxing champion of the Transvaal and South Africa, a thinker and an athlete, a man whose physical power was matched by his intellectual force. He enrolled at the University of Zululand to study law. There he joined SASO and became a founding member of the Black Allied Workers Union. His political abilities were recognized quickly. In July 1973, at the SASO General Council meeting, he was elected president. He was 22 years old. And it was Muntu Myeza who conceived and drove the idea of the Viva FRELIMO rallies, the very rallies that led to the arrest of the SASO Nine. He addressed 5,000 people at Curry's Fountain Stadium. The police moved in with dogs and batons. The arrests followed. On Robben Island, Myeza remained committed to Black consciousness without compromise. When Patrick Lekota began his evolution towards the ANC's non-racial tradition, Myeza was one of those who did not hide his displeasure. He regarded it as a betrayal. The ideological battle that was playing out inside the island prison between the BCM inmates and the ANC's imprisoned leadership was one that Myeza engaged without equivocation. He stayed BCM. After his release, he joined ZAPU and served in multiple senior capacities: publicity secretary, secretary for defense, and projects coordinator. He was, by all accounts, an extraordinary orator. He was invited to speak at Howard University in Washington, a significant honor, an invitation to address one of the most historically important Black universities in the United States. And in a move that should surprise no one, the apartheid government denied him a passport and he could not go. In 1990, as South Africa stood on the threshold of transformation, with Nelson Mandela release, the ANC unbanned, and the negotiations beginning, Muntu Myeza was part of the ZAPU delegation that went to meet Mandela after his release from prison. He was an orator in a moment that demanded oratory. He was a thinker in a moment that demanded thinking. His comrades called him Ingelosi Yomhlaba, the angel of the earth. On the 3rd of July, 1990, Muntu Myeza was returning from a meeting in Bloemfontein when his vehicle veered off the road, hit a pole, and rolled over. His car was discovered the following morning. He was rushed to hospital. He died there. He was 39 years old. The circumstances of the crash have never been fully explained. A BCM leader, Professor Ntumeleng Mosala, summed up the mood that surrounded his death. Anyone who believes that only God is at work is a fool. And you can understand, given how government had operated up until that point, that people would not believe that it was just an accident. In 2012, ZAPU declared the month of July Muntu Myeza Memorial Month. His comrades continued to hold annual commemorations. In 2025, the Black Consciousness Movement United held a full-day ceremony at his gravesite on the anniversary of his death. We've come to the end of this editing cycle, and as per usual, I have either yammered on or thought that I could make this into one episode, but alas, I cannot. And given the importance of these individuals and what they've accomplished and what they've went through, I am splitting these into 2 episodes. So thank you so much for joining this week. Next week, we continue with the rest of the SASO 6, minus the 3 we've done individual episodes for. And really look at these remarkable individuals, give them their flowers, and make sure that we highlight the importance they had on our democracy and the communities at large. So thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you next week for part 2. Bye!